I think, therefore I am. Those are the famous words of the famous philosopher Rene Descartes. If there is any one sentence that sums up the entire project of modern philosophy, any sentence that can encapsulate philosophy from the 1600s until the year 2000, I think, therefore I am, is probably that sentence. The problem is, very few of us know what Descartes meant by that. And also the problem is that Descartes was wrong, but that's another sermon for another time. That sentence doesn't quite capture what he's saying, though, because to understand it, you have to understand what he was trying to do in his meditations. He was trying to figure out what solid ground, if any, is there for human knowledge. And he took it on faith, that faith was not that solid ground. In fact, he was trying to figure out, how could I be confident that I actually know something? How could I be sure of anything at all? He, again, took it on faith that faith was not the answer to that. So he went through the list and he tried to figure out, is the existence of God something that he could be sure of? Is the goodness of God something that he could be sure of? Is his own mind, are his senses and his eyes and ears something that he can be confident in? And systematically, he goes through and says, well, I can doubt every one of those things. I can doubt the goodness of God despite the evidence. I could doubt the existence of God. I can doubt the rationality of my own mind. Maybe I'm crazy. How would I know? I could doubt the evidence of my own eyes and ears. I mean, they didn't have the Matrix back then, but maybe I'm in the Matrix. How would I know? He could doubt everything that he thought of, except, he said, his doubt. I mean, he couldn't doubt that he was doubting. That wouldn't make any kind of sense. So he couldn't doubt his doubt, and if he couldn't doubt his doubt, he also couldn't doubt that there was a he that was doubting. I think, therefore I exist. Or maybe rather, I doubt, therefore I am. Descartes ushered into philosophy a brand new era of systematic skepticism, where it was never okay to take anything on faith anymore, no matter who said it. And he ushered into the Western culture writ large this new idea that our doubt should be, not just could be, but should be wedded to our identity. Would you rather be someone who blindly believes or an intelligent doubter? That is the bifurcation. That's the separation that Descartes put between faith and doubt. Now, I have my issues with Descartes, but that's a different sermon. And I don't want to see more of your eyes get glazed over. So, I'll just say this. Part of the reason that his I think, therefore I am, or I doubt, therefore I am idea or sentence got wedded to our identities and integrated into Western culture is because it's so darn relatable. Because he set up this duality between faith and doubt, and what, by and large, most of the church did in response to that is said, well, yeah, and you have to have faith. But everybody else goes, yeah, but I doubt. But I do doubt. All of us doubt. All of us doubt. I like to say that there are two kinds of people in this world. There are people that have doubted their God, doubted their faith, and there are people who will. All of us, every single one of us, if we're honest, has our doubts. You lose your job. and you find yourself doubting whether God is actually as good as your mom taught you he was. You see videos of atrocities here at home and around the world, even this week, and you doubt, how could there be a just God in heaven overseeing all of this? You see self-professed Christians, people you grew up with, people you grew up admiring, saying and doing horrible things. And you doubt, understandably, is the Jesus way the way it is? Or is it just an elaborate grab for power? You have beloved friends or family members who believe sometimes slightly, sometimes radically different things. And you're like, man, but they're great people. And you doubt when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Or maybe none of those things has shaken your faith quite so much as the absolute silence you have heard from God. You have been faithful. You have prayed your soul out night after night after night after night, and you can't remember the last time you heard something from the Lord. Every single one of us experiences doubts. And when we doubt, we worry. We worry that we will be outside the fold. We worry that maybe God will not accept us because of our doubts. We worry that we might need that key called faith to unlock the door to the answers that we've been looking for, but we just can't seem to summon up a doubt-free faith. We worry that maybe it's our doubts that are causing God's silence, our questions that are pushing God away. That ultimately, if there's any kind of doubt in us, it needs to be rooted out and destroyed before God will grace us with his presence and with his power. Whole churches sometimes come to believe something like this. And they're pretty inhospitable places to search for God. Peter's story from Matthew 14, the passage that Lena read for us this morning, Peter's story has been used to justify this way of thinking, this complete bifurcation between faith and doubt. We see Peter sinking beneath the waves, and we hear Jesus' words in this passage, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" And we go, see? There it is. Jesus himself scolding Peter for doubting. See, there it is. Peter's doubt causing him to lose access to God's power and provision. If only he had believed. If only I could believe. If only I had a doubt-free faith, maybe I'd be better. I'd be okay. I would get it. Maybe God would finally come to me. Friends, I'm here to tell you today that there could not be a worse interpretation of that passage. Today, we're going to focus our attention very closely, first on Peter, and then on Jesus. And when we focus our attention on Peter, we're going to see that the relationship between doubt and faith is a whole lot more complex than Descartes gave it credit for. And when we focus our attention on Jesus, we're going to see that the relationship of our doubt and Jesus is a whole lot better than we imagined. So let's take a look at Peter. A lot of people read this story that Lena read for us this morning, and they think that Peter began to doubt when he was out there walking on the water. But that's just not true. His doubt started a lot earlier than that. But to see it, we have to back up in the story a little bit. All right, so the disciples, Peter with them, were forced by Jesus, made by Jesus, to get into the boat and get out into the lake while Jesus went to the mountainside to pray after feeding 5,000 people with a few loaves and fishes. And they're out there in the middle of the lake. They're rowing all night long. Matthew says that they're way out in the lake, and that it's the fourth watch of the night, which is the last watch of the night. So it's very, very early in the morning. They have been rowing against the wind and the waves all night long, and with gusts blowing sheets of water into their eyes, they see a shadowy figure coming out on the water. And they're terrified. And they say, it's a ghost. And before you're like, oh, silly Galileans, they're so superstitious. I want you to imagine yourself in that situation for a minute. You are out there in the middle of a lake, no one else around. You've been rowing all night long trying to get to the other side. You're exhausted, and then you see a human-ish figure walking towards you on top of the water. Would you naturally be like, oh, that must be Jesus? Or would you be like, oh, crap, the Blair Witch Project is true? I know what I would choose. If it were me, if I were a disciple, like, I've heard about ghosts before. I know people who believe in them. I know people today who believe in them. I'd be like, that makes a whole lot of sense. I've never heard of someone walking on the water before. So they shout, it's a ghost. And into the maelstrom of all their yelling and the waves whipping around them, Jesus says, courage. It's me. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And right here is where we see the first inklings of Peter's doubt. Peter, who literally just saw Jesus feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Peter, who has seen Jesus already cast out demons and heal the sick. Peter, who witnessed Jesus heal his own mother-in-law with a touch. Peter, who witnessed Jesus raise a young girl from the dead. This same Peter, who Peter sees someone who looks like Jesus, who sounds like Jesus, saying, it's me. Don't be afraid. Something he said many times before, and Peter says, if it's you, I need some evidence. Let me come to you on the water. You see, Peter's doubt didn't start when he was out on the water. Peter's doubt began in the boat. He is, quite famously, the only one of the disciples to ask Jesus for evidence. Jesus' word wasn't good enough for Peter. If it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. People think that Peter was all faith and no doubt until he saw the water beneath his feet. But the reality is that Peter was like us. Peter is just like us. He was a mixture of faith and doubt and faith. He wanted some evidence, but he was also willing to believe. In fact, to his credit, and friends, I want you to hear this, he is willing to risk himself to get the evidence that he's looking for. He is willing to step out of the boat to get the evidence he's looking for. Too many of us, when faced with our doubts, want evidence without any personal risk or involvement. We want to know everything up front without risking getting involved. We want to know whether or not the Bible is true without risking taking the time to read it and investing all of that time, maybe wasting all of that time. We want to know whether or not prayer works without taking the risk of feeling stupid because we were praying into an empty room. We want to know whether or not God is good in the midst of our pain and suffering without taking the risk of inviting him into our everyday life before the pain and suffering, much less in it. We want to know. We want evidence That the church can be a place where broken people like me and broken families can be healed together without taking the risk of getting involved with other broken people, lest we sink into it too deep. Sometimes, if we're unwilling to take any personal risk with the evidence gathering project that we have, if we're unwilling to endure a personal risk to get that evidence, then I would want to submit to you that maybe what we have isn't doubt, it's cynicism. It's a commitment to doubting over and against faith. Friends, doubt and faith don't have to be mutually exclusive. It doesn't have to be like that. In fact, it actually can't be like that. For one thing, you can't doubt without having faith in something. And I'm not going to go too deep into this, but let me put it this way. Show me what you doubt, and I'll show you what you believe without questioning it. You only ever doubt anything on the basis of faith in something else that you cannot prove. But you also cannot have faith, real, meaningful faith, unless you have doubt. Faith is in part made possible by doubt in the same way that bravery is made possible by fear. Sometimes my son, Micah, cuddles up to me and digs his face into my leg when he's afraid of something, and he says, "Daddy, I'm not feeling brave." I say, "Oh yeah? How are you feeling?" And he says, "I'm feeling scary." And I say, "Oh, you feeling scared?" And he says, "Yeah." And I say, "Oh, okay, that's good." And then he looks at me. And I say, "Because now you have a chance to be brave." Because bravery isn't not being scared. Bravery is being scared and doing what you need to do anyway. Friends, faith is having doubt and being willing to trust Jesus anyway. Faith is having doubt and stepping out of the boat anyway. That's what it is. Faith is having doubt and coming to church anyway. I see so much faith in this room right now. Faith is having questions, but stepping into those questions boldly and really looking for looking for the answers, assuming that they may actually be there, instead of sort of safely holding them as a reason to distance yourself from God. That's faith. Faith is praying again tonight into the silence, hoping against hope that someone is actually listening. Faith is not the absence of doubt. Faith is the willingness to trust Jesus despite the presence of our doubts. So the question is not, how do I root out and destroy every doubt in my life? That's not the question, because it's not possible. The question instead is, am I willing to take the next step toward Jesus despite my doubts? Am I willing to take the next step toward Jesus despite the fact that the winds are against me, despite the fact that the winds of culture, the winds of my own questions, the winds of my personal history, the winds of my being burned in the church, the winds of the people I grew up with going the wrong way, all of those winds are against me. Am I still willing to take the next step toward Jesus? That's the question of faith. Because we all doubt. Well, Peter, he takes his step out of the boat with that little faith that Jesus tells us he has. He takes his step out of the boat with that mixture of faith and doubt that he has. And the water is shockingly hard beneath his feet. Honestly, if I were designing this story, the water would all be hard, and so like all the waves would be and they'd be like sliding under him, and then he'd be like slipping, But that's not the way it happens. So like God's imagination for how to make this work is even better than mine. Peter steps out onto the water, and it is firm beneath his feet. But did you know that it wasn't his faith that made the water firm beneath his feet? It was the power of God. It was the power of Jesus. The water being a hard surface for him to walk on, that's all grace. His faith simply got him out of the boat to experience it. The miracle was given. The question was, would you walk on the water that is already hard? All grace. But Peter's faith, his little faith, does get him out of the boat. It does get him out there. But as he makes his way towards Jesus, he takes his eyes, which is to say his mind, off of Jesus and puts it on the wind. He takes his mind off of the power of Jesus and he puts his mind on the power of the sea. He stops thinking about how incredible it is that he, Peter, is standing on top of the water. And he starts to imagine what it must be like underneath. So that's where he goes. He starts to sink. How does Peter get from walking on water faith to sinking in his doubt? Well, first of all, I want you to remember that his doubt was already there. His doubt was already present. So it's not like, how did he have faith and then all of a sudden didn't have faith anymore? Or how did he not have doubt and then he doubted again? The question is really more like, why did doubt get into the driver's seat? Why did doubt overwhelm his faith in that moment? Well, one possible reason is just remember, it was already scary in the boat. It was scary when they were in the boat. They were exhausted and tired and afraid, and Jesus is like, don't be afraid. Imagine how scary it would be when you're out on the water and your source of security that you've been relying on all night is way over there, and you're doing something you've never done before and could not even have imagined doing a couple seconds ago. How many of you know that though it can take a tremendous amount of faith to step out of the boat, sometimes it takes far more faith to keep walking? It can take a tremendous amount of faith to get out of the boat, to step into a life of faith in Jesus. But oh my goodness, it takes so much more faith sometimes to keep walking in the midst of the trials that you experience. It can take so much faith to begin following the Jesus way. But friends, it takes so much more faith to sustain it over a lifetime. The truth is that not even Peter, who was willing to get out of the boat to begin with, that takes some courage as well as faith. He took some of that courage Jesus said to take. Not even Peter, with Jesus standing in front of him on the water, could perfectly sustain his faith when the wind got whipping around him. So not only should we not be surprised that we will experience seasons of doubt in our life that seem to overwhelm us, not only should we not be surprised by that, we should expect it. Some of us have stepped out of the boat into the seemingly miraculous power of God. We've summoned up that faith for the first time, and we stepped onto solid water that we did not expect, and we're like, whoa! If this is what faith is like, I'm never going back to doubting. Well, I got bad news for you. You might. You probably will at some point, because that doubt still lives in the same house. It'll still try to get in the driver's seat from time to time. And there's something a little bit dangerous about thinking that I will never doubt again. Guys, what I've experienced, I could never doubt again. There's a danger in that. The danger is that stuff happens in our life, and slowly, imperceptibly, we start putting our faith in our faith and not in Jesus. And remember, Peter's faith didn't make the water walkable. Jesus did that. His faith just got him out the boat. So when we start putting our faith in our faith, and then we start to look around and we start to go, oh my goodness, look at the atrocities that are going on in our world. Oh my goodness, the climate. Oh my goodness, my bills are stacking up. Oh my goodness, these people that I love passed away. They were my rock. Oh my goodness, I got these friends that I can't reconcile their faith with mine. And we start to experience the winds of life, and then we go, that's so much stronger than my faith. Because it is. It's not stronger than Jesus. But we start to sink because we take our eyes off Jesus, and we don't just start looking at the wind, we start looking into ourselves. We start to go, how can I sustain this water walking business? And we can't. So we sink. And then we worry, where did the faith go? I guess I don't have it anymore. I guess that's over. That part of my life is done. Maybe I need to move on to being a TikTok influencer or something. Friends, your faith is still there. It's still there. If you can doubt, you can believe. Doubt and faith live in the same house. Sometimes they even share the same bed, and they definitely fight for the driver's seat. But even in those seasons of overwhelming doubt, even in those seasons when you're out on the water and you've begun already to sink, I will bet you that you have enough faith to do what Peter did and cry out, Lord, save me. Lord, save me. Friends, I want to invite you to use that last little bit of faith you may have and cry out to Jesus, Lord, save me. Lord, save me. Because when you look to Jesus and not to your own faith as the source of your strength, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's look at Jesus. How does Jesus respond to Peter's doubt? Remember, the first time Peter doubted in the story was when he was already in the boat. And Jesus came and said, it's me. And Peter says, if it's you. Now, if it were me, if I were Jesus, I'd start in on Peter right there. I'd be like, if it's me. I'm sorry. Is the 5,000 feeding, demon casting outing, people healing, mother-in-law healing, raising from the dead, Jesus walking on water, too hard for you to believe? But thank God I'm not Jesus. That's my wife there, everybody. I think you'd want me to be a little bit more like Jesus. In any case, Jesus doesn't respond to Peter like I would. Jesus says, come on. You want evidence? Come to me. You want power? Despite your doubt? Come to me. Come on. That's what Jesus does. Jesus doesn't demean his doubt, and he doesn't demean yours. Jesus simply invites us to come to him, to experience him in a deeper way. Peter of little faith has been allowed to walk on water. Even though he has a hard time taking Jesus at his word. Peter says, if it's you. And Jesus says, I see you're doubting, and I see that you want to be with me. So come. Come to me. Come with all your questions and imperfections. Come with all your worries and your wondering. Come with all your anxiety. Come with your doubtful faith. Come, Jesus says. Friends, if you want to be with Jesus, you do not have to have all your issues worked out. You do not have to be praying all those, whatever you might think of as perfect prayers to be with Jesus. You don't have to have perfect, stalwart, unshakable faith to be with Jesus. All you need is to want to be with Jesus. Because Jesus wants to be with you. He wants to be with you. And then in that moment, when Peter's out on the water and his faith takes a back seat and he begins to sink and he cries out, "Lord, save me." Does Jesus shout back, "What was that, Peter? Oh, I'm sorry. Am I good enough for you now? Get your act together. Stop doubting." No. No. Friends, some of you have started strong in your faith, but you backslidden a bit. And you think that Jesus wants nothing to do with you. Even though you might know, because you've been at Tapestry long enough to know that that's not true, you still might feel that Jesus wants nothing to do with you. Because how could he? After all, after you've experienced walking on water or miracles, after you've been saved into that life already once, and then you took your eyes off him, how could he want anything to do with you after you still doubt, after you still turn away, after you're still sinking? Matthew says, immediately, Jesus reaches out and grabs Peter up out of the water. Immediately. Jesus doesn't wait till Peter gets his act together. As soon as Peter's little faith left his lips, Jesus grabs him up out of the water. Friends, some of you need to know today that you are never so far under the water that you can't shout, "Lord, save me," and he won't grab you up out of it. Some of us during communion might need to spend some time praying in the back with our prayer team. Your own version of the prayer, "Lord, save me." Watch him reach out. Watch him reach out for you. It's only after Jesus saved Peter, only after Jesus pulls Peter up out of the water, that Jesus challenges gently, I would say, Peter's doubt, by the way. He challenges Peter to think, to grow, to learn from his experience. He doesn't scold Peter. He doesn't say, "Have more faith, man," or "You shouldn't have doubted." No, he asks Peter a question. He just asks him a question. And you know, some of us, we like to ask questions, but have the answer in mind. And so then we ask the question, but then we give the answer before the person can. It's like we do this when we're arguing with each other sometimes, It's like, "Why didn't you do that?" "Oh, I know why you didn't do that." That's not how Jesus does. Jesus says, "You have little faith." Not no faith. He acknowledges the little faith that Peter has. "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" Why did you doubt? One of the things I love about Jesus is that he is a brilliant psychologist. And he knew back before gentle parenting and positive affirmation was a thing. He knew that you shouldn't ask people that question while they were sinking. So after he pulls Peter up out of the water, after he's done with the desperate moment in his life, after he is in the safety of Jesus' arms, he invites Peter into the work that you can only do in that safe place. And he invites Peter to doubt his doubt. That thing that Rene Descartes thought you couldn't do. That's the only thing I can be sure of, is my doubt. Jesus invites Peter to doubt his doubt, to understand it, to uncover what is beneath it and behind it. And he doesn't answer the question for him. Because I think if he did, even if it was an answer that was idiosyncratic to Peter, it was just Peter's answer, I think probably knowing people like us, we would probably read that answer and we go, there it is, that's true for me and all of us too. That's why we doubt. But I think that we all doubt for different reasons. And Jesus invites Peter and us to ask the question, why? What's beneath those doubts? What's behind them? What are we believing in without questioning that's causing us to have those doubts? And Peter, still grappling with that question, still soaking wet, literally, with his doubt, along with the other disciples, does a remarkable thing. Something that no Jewish person would have been caught dead doing in the first century AD. They worship a human being. They worship Jesus. They say, for the very first time, human beings utter the words, for the very first time in the Gospels, truly you are the Son of God. And I think part of the reason they say that is because they saw him walking on water. But I don't think that's all of it. Because remember, Jesus just got done feeding 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. They've seen him do miracles before. I think that they experienced in Jesus' character, in his response to Peter, something that they recognized from their time with God. And they said, this is it. He is him. This is the Son of God. Friends, if you, like Peter, like all of us, if you doubt, I want to invite you not to distance yourself from it, not to deny it and pretend like it doesn't exist, not to try and come to church and put on a show of faith, but to bring it close. To bring it close, to bring your doubt close to your faith, to bring it to Jesus. He will not let you sink. He will not shame you. He will not scold you. Your doubt can actually be, like it was for Peter, the location of your salvation, the place where you reconnect with God. When you bring it to him, when you offer your doubt to Jesus, watch him say, come, my friend, let's go for a little walk back to the boat. Here's my hand. Let's uncover what's underneath this together.